Imagine this. Tomorrow morning you wake up. The news says the economy is collapsing, markets crashing, companies freezing hiring, layoffs spreading. Everyone starts asking the same question. What happens to my investments? But almost nobody asks the question that actually determines whether their life survives the collapse. Not their portfolio, not their crypto, their salary. Because if the economy collapses, your salary isn't just income, it's the engine that holds your entire life together. Mortgage, insurance, school tuition, groceries, everything. And today, we're doing something almost nobody does. We're going to run a forensic audit on what economic collapse actually does to a high earner's salary. Not the Hollywood version, the structural version that quietly destroys financial security. Let's open the books. Most people imagine collapse like a movie, a single catastrophic event. Markets drop overnight, banks fail instantly, everything breaks at once. But historically, collapse rarely looks like that. It looks like compression, slow, layered, almost invisible at first. Companies stop growing, revenue slows, budgets tighten, hiring freezes. Then, slowly, headcount shrinks, wages stall, opportunities disappear. And here's the critical detail. Economic collapse doesn't hit everyone at once. It hits in layers. Layer 1. Discretionary industries. The first industries to feel pressure are the ones tied to optional spending. Retail, travel, hospitality, entertainment. When people feel economic pressure, they stop buying things they don't absolutely need. That's why these industries collapse first. Layer 2. Growth industries. Next comes the industries tied to corporate expansion, marketing, consulting, product development. When companies stop growing, they stop investing in growth. Budgets disappear, contracts vanish, entire departments shrink. Then, we reach the layer most professionals believe protects them. Finance, legal services, corporate leadership, healthcare administration. These roles feel stable until the companies funding them start failing, and eventually they do. But there's a fourth layer, and this is the one almost nobody talks about. Even if your job survives, your salary might not. Not because it disappears, because its purchasing power collapses. You keep the number, but the number stops buying the life you built around it. And this is the mechanism most high earners completely miss. Let's run the numbers. Here's what historically happens in a serious economic contraction. Think something like the 2008 financial crisis. Households earning under $75,000 get hit first. Job losses concentrate here because these workers sit closest to industries that shrink immediately. Households earning $175,000 to $150,000 get hit next. They're expensive enough to cut, but not senior enough to protect. But here's where the story gets interesting. Households earning $150,000 and above, the group that typically feels the most financially secure. On paper, they look protected, and at first, sometimes they are. Layoffs initially hit lower positions, but high earners have something far more dangerous: high fixed costs. The high earner trap. The higher the income, the larger the lifestyle built around it. Bigger mortgage, more expensive car payments, private school tuition, higher insurance obligations, more financial commitments that don't adjust downward easily. So when the economy eventually reaches these earners, the gap becomes enormous. A $200,000 salary in a growing economy feels powerful, but in a contracting economy, that same salary can disappear overnight, and the life built around it doesn't shrink with it. The mortgage stays, the car payment stays, the tuition stays, the expenses remain exactly where they were, but the income supporting them vanishes. This is what economists sometimes call salary compression, and for high earners, it's one of the most dangerous financial dynamics in a recession. The dependency ratio problem. There's a number almost nobody tracks, but during economic collapse, it becomes the most important number in your financial life: your dependency ratio. In simple terms, how many financial obligations depend entirely on your job continuing? Mortgage, debt, insurance, education costs, lifestyle spending. In a healthy economy, a high dependency ratio is uncomfortable. In a collapsing economy, it becomes catastrophic. Because the job market stops absorbing people quickly. What normally takes 3 months to replace suddenly takes 8 months, sometimes longer. And during that time, your financial obligations do not pause. Let's run some forensic math. Imagine a professional household spending $14,000 per month. That's not unusual for dual-income high earners. If one income disappears and replacement takes 8 months, the household needs $112,000 in liquid cash just to survive that gap. Not retirement accounts, not home equity, actual accessible liquidity. And most high-earning households don't have it. Their wealth exists on paper, but their runway does not. And that is the exact moment when someone who felt financially successful suddenly feels financially fragile. But even if your job survives, there's another mechanism quietly destroying income: inflation. During crises, governments respond by injecting liquidity into the economy. Lower interest rates, more money supply. Short-term stabilization, long-term, inflation. And inflation is a hidden salary cut. Your salary might stay at $180,000, but groceries rise 20%, housing rises 15%, healthcare rises 18%. Suddenly, your lifestyle costs 25% more to maintain. That's the equivalent of a $45,000 pay cut, and nobody announces it. Your salary didn't shrink, your purchasing power did. Now let's talk about the industries most exposed. Salary risk concentrates heavily in specific industries: technology, finance, real estate, consulting, professional services. These sectors thrive in expansion cycles, but when growth stops, they contract fast. We saw this already when tech companies eliminated over 200,000 jobs in a relatively mild slowdown. In a true economic contraction, that number scales dramatically. So what actually protects someone during economic collapse? It's not simply earning more, because more income from a single source just increases the stakes if that source fails. Real protection comes from 3 structural factors. First, liquidity: 12 months of living expenses accessible in cash. Second, reduced fixed obligations. Lower monthly commitments dramatically extend survival time during disruption. Third, income not tied to a single employer. And this is where most professionals are structurally exposed, because their entire financial life depends on one organization continuing to pay them. Which is why more people are starting to explore scalable income models that operate outside traditional employment cycles. Digital systems, leverage-based businesses, distribution models that generate income independent of a single employer's balance sheet. I've been studying one of those systems closely myself. If you're curious how that model works, there's a breakdown linked in the description that explains it in detail. Worth looking at if this conversation is resonating. The final reality most people miss: economic collapse doesn't arrive dramatically. It compresses slowly. It moves through industries in waves. And by the time it reaches the high earner who believed they were protected, the financial structure built around their salary becomes dangerously fragile. Because salary alone is not financial security, it's dependency. The people who survive economic contractions best aren't always the ones who earned the most beforehand. They're the ones who built the most margin, the most liquidity, and the most independence from any single income source. Not because they predicted the crisis, because they built a financial structure that didn't require prediction to survive one. And in a collapsing economy, that structure becomes the only thing that matters. I'm Cole, and that was The Audit. I'll see you in the next one. And I'm curious about something. At what salary level did you personally start feeling financially safe? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.